let's start off with, from a personal level, with Alex's character, he has like a really rocky relationship with his wife and sort of his son. So in the coming season, what do you want to see happen with that relationship?
I think that Alex, he's a very conscientious man, and even though he's been struggling with his identity and his purpose and his meaning and what he's meant to do in this world, and he is kind of figuring it out, and in some ways, sadly, he's figured out that he wasn't meant to be married with a kid. He's still very, very compassionate. I mean, it's part of who he is. So I can't see him not trying in some way to reconcile and somehow patch things up with his family. Whether or not they end up staying together, but he's still Melis's dad. That can never change, and I think he takes that very seriously. So he will, in some way or another, try. I think he should. That's something I would want to explore, is that he's not the kind of guy, I mean, as much of a deadbeat dad as he may have been, because he ran away and kind of like did the space pilot thing while his family waited for him at home. Once he's figured out his baggage and his issues, he's not the kind of guy that would just let that hang and leave those people to suffer and deal with it on their own.
So now the team has kind of gotten back together. You got Bobby back on the ship.
Yeah.
Everything is looking good, except there's still kind of a fracture as far as the relationships go. Everything's not really gelled.
Correct.
What do you think Alex's confidence in Holden as a captain at this point?
Well, I don't think the fracture comes from Holden. I think the fracture came from Naomi. Naomi kind of betrayed the team, betrayed the crew. We are basically a democratic family. We're not partisan. We don't run by the rules of any nation. We're not Martian, Belter, or Earther. We're pretty much an independent nation of our own on the Rossi, and we make decisions based on democratic vote. Captain or no captain, Holden doesn't decide what we do unless we all agree, and that is just demonstrated throughout the show. There are multiple times where we take votes on what we're going to do, and even in the last season, Prax, who we ended up embracing as a member of our crew, Prax ended up being a tiebreaker and ended up being the deciding factor on us going to Io or not to save his son, and or no, in that case it was to save the Martians, Avasarala and Bobby, who were sending out a distress call when Holden wanted to go save Prax's kid on Io. Prax actually ended up being the deciding vote to go and rescue Bobby and Avasarala. So we work on a democratic system, and Naomi completely sidestepped that and betrayed us all. So she created the rift.
I guess I was thinking from the standpoint of Holden being a little crazy towards the end.
Yeah, well,
that's what I kind of mean.
Yeah, but Holden, crazy or not, he's always been passionate. He's always been opinionated. He's always made decisions from his gut. We haven't always understood them, but he's almost always been right. Almost always been right. His gut is what makes him a good leader. He makes decisions that none of us would necessarily make, but he almost always gets it right. So we trust him. And even in the case of what appeared like craziness, he was trusting this connection he had with Miller. And he trusted that, and we trusted him, and it ended up saving our lives. So, yeah, I mean, is he a little bit quirky, eccentric, a little bit of an oddball? Yeah, he is. And we all accept that, acknowledge it, and embrace it and love him for it. But I still think we believe in him as a leader. At least Alex does. And Amos does, too. I mean, you know, Holden was talking to himself and like doing all sorts of weird stuff, but he still got us out of the frying pan when we needed to be. He saved our lives, so that earns a certain amount of respect. The damage that needs to be healed is the rift and trust that Naomi created between her and Holden, her and Amos specifically, more exceptionally, and her and Alex have already started to patch things up. They understand each other a little bit better, but that's the real That's the real kind of damage that needed to be repaired in order to bring the team back together.
Now that you've opened up the rings, there's like 5 million rings now.
1,500, yeah.
I'm just making it.
Yeah.
So if you had to choose what kind of world you get to see if you guys go through one of those rings, what would you like the crew to explore?
I mean, obviously, Alex comes from a planet that they're desperately spending their entire lifetime trying to terraform. So I think a lifeless rock would be the last place he wants to go. I think Alex would want to be able to experience a world with an ocean, a world with forests, a world with grass, a world with an atmosphere, a world that had gravity that he could function under, because Mars comes from a gravity of about 1/3 of Earth's. So a 1G gravity would be exhausting to a Belter or to a Martian. It would wear us down. Unless you're a Marine who trains in 1G, it would be like being in an elevator that is constantly accelerating up, and you would feel that weight and that heaviness all the time. So I think a fully terraformed atmosphere with life and fauna and flora that had a less than 1G gravity would be something Alex would love to experience, because it's the Martian dream.
Last question, so you go back to your line. Of all the different crew members you have on the ship right now, who do you think Alex is closest to?
Definitely Bobby. Bobby Draper is the one he most bonds with. He understands her as a military man and as a Martian. I think that him and Amos have come to understandings. Amos gives him good advice about certain things to do with his family and with certain relationships. So Amos somehow has these bizarre ways of giving good advice. Him and Holden, they don't really get along. They kind of understand each other when it comes to business. They're really good in they're good business colleagues. When it comes to personal stuff, Alex doesn't really agree with how Holden handles his personal life. And Naomi and him have slowly started to bond. He respects her and her connection and her loyalty to her culture, because he wishes he could be as courageous, as brave, and as loyal as she was. But he doesn't necessarily understand it. So there's a lot of separations between him and the rest of the Rossi crew, despite the fact that he considers them family, despite the fact that he loves them all and wants to keep on it. But Bobby is the person that he identifies with, that he bonds with. They have a cultural history, and they have a military history, that they just speak the same language. They get along. They have a shorthand and a chemistry with each other that I think he feels most comfortable with.
Thank you so much.